Hello and welcome to Agents of Nonprofit. My name is Alexander Lapa, and I'm here to speak with everyday superheroes helping nonprofits. Joining me today is a very special superhero, my dad, George Lapa. George, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Alex.
So, your background obviously is going to be very unique, but I was wondering if you can give people just a brief outline of, where you came from, what you're doing these days, and a bit about, who you are and your career.
Okay. My background is basically from Latvia. My ancestors lived in Latvia a long time. But then during the war, we escaped and we ended up in Belgium. And we stayed there in Belgium for 6 years. I had to learn French and Flemish. And in 1951, we came to Canada when I had to learn English. So now English is my main language. I was lucky enough to graduate from McGill as electrical engineer in 1962, worked for about 5 years in engineering, and then switched to back to school to get an MBA. I graduated in 69, met my wife also in 69. We married in 1970, so we married now for 53 years. But I worked mainly for the federal government for 25 years. Out of Montreal, and then was there was an incentive to leave the government after 20 at that time in 1995, approximately 1997, I think it was, 1995. And then I did some consulting work, private consulting work for a few years, but by beginning of 2000 and something, I fully retired. And my wife says, "What are you going to do now?" So I said, "Well, I don't know." But I saw an ad in the paper looking for people to work with computers. It was a volunteer bureau in the city called Dorval. They needed some help with entering data, which I said, okay. And that's how it started. I've been with them for about 20 years now. They moved to Saint-Anne-de-Bellevue, and we are maintaining actually not doing data entry, but maintaining the network, maintaining their computers, doing physical hardware modifications, physical modifications, software modifications. And that's what I'm currently doing at the moment.
So for people to give them some context, based on that rich history, my dad is 85 years old today, which is awesome. Super in great shape, great health, totally doesn't look his age, and I'm very proud of him. And part two is this is a superhero origin story of not just my dad, but of me, because it was by virtue of my dad working at this nonprofit organization. Through this nonprofit is how I started. It was my very first Salesforce nonprofit client. Actually, my very first client was a nonprofit, and that was the organization my dad worked at. So this is kind of like a 2-in-1 origin story. You said, Dad, I'm going to call you Dad because I don't know how I can't call you George. You mentioned you found them in the newspaper. So was it just a matter of you were able to, or you felt that you could apply your skills that you learned at the organization? Was it just because you were looking for something to do? Was there any particular reason why this organization, why the Volunteer West Island, you felt was a good fit for how you wanted to spend some of your retirement?
Well, yes. They had an ad in the paper saying they needed someone to enter data into the computer system. And I was quite interested in computers. I've been working in computers since 1965. So I was very familiar and I would love to work with that. So I decided to go there. It was in Dorval. And they said, yes, you're very good, but we need you to do some data entry. But your skills are so much better. There's a fellow named Brian. Brian is doing alone. He is doing all kinds of cabling and computer installations. These computers that we got at the office there, that they got, were donated. They were second-hand computers, and they had to be reconfigured and sometimes physically modified to fit the needs of the organization. And Brian was using a software, Excel, but he was using also VBA, Visual Basic Database Excel, to suit the needs of the Volunteer West Island organization. And it was very customized. I decided to go to school even one session, one evening night, to go to school and learn about VBA, but it was rather complicated, and I felt I was not able to keep up with it. So Brian continued, and we then moved from Dorval. We moved to St. Anne de Bellevue about 15 years ago. We had to rewire everything. We had a professional company install the cabling through the walls and the ceiling, and each office now has an outlet, Ethernet outlet, and we had to install the computers, again, the second-hand computers, cabling to the computer, and then program the whatever software they needed for their work. But Brian continued to use Visual Basic for applications. And about 10 years ago, 2013, yes, exactly. Unfortunately, he passed away, and I was left alone. And I couldn't continue to work with VBA. And I asked Alex to come over, and you to come over, and to see, because you had some knowledge of that. So that's how you started the contact with the office.
Yeah, that's exactly right. At the time, I had, and I still have, quite a bit of knowledge using Microsoft Access, which uses VBA. And I had been building custom databases using it. This was obviously pre Salesforce many years ago at this point. And it was a very powerful tool because it is a relational database, very powerful tool to be able to use locally, not so great across a network, although there was ways of managing that. But it was actually by virtue of that not only was I able to help, but that it was able to make that leap from Access to Salesforce, because I understood the concept of databases, I understood the concept of CRMs, because I had built them from scratch, or at least on that Access platform.
Yes, that was interesting too, because the executive director, Linda, she liked what you were offering, but she had to convince her board of directors.
To make sure it's clear, when we say offering, I didn't mean Access, and I don't mean Access. I meant Salesforce, because at that time, I was going through a career change where I had learned and I knew of Siebel CRM, and I was just making that change to Salesforce CRM. And when I realized the power and the capability of it and how it can be useful to nonprofits, when Linda did approach me to ask, what can we do with this current Microsoft Access database? I said, listen, let's throw this thing into the garbage. It's past its prime. Access is no longer a viable solution for what you're trying to use it for. But there's this great new CRM called Salesforce, which at the time was still early on. It was a newer technology, not so well known, of course, that is today. And that was what I was proposing to Linda. And then we'll continue your story, because then Linda had to become the champion to promote it within the board of directors. I'll let you take over the story from there.
Yes, Linda, this was a good solution. We're looking about 10 years ago, 2013. And she said, yes, since we had no other option, your offer was accepted, but she had to convince her board of directors, and that was a major challenge because they were not computer savvy, and they expressed their concerns and so on and so forth. But eventually, somehow, she managed to do it, and we got started on that. And this is how you got started.
And then Linda actually was a guest on the podcast. She was looking, and I was looking back at the history. She was guest number 4 on the podcast. So if listeners want to hear an early version of this show, where I do talk to Linda, the executive director of this nonprofit, we kind of followed that story there. But you're right. The idea was, because it was so new, because there was another option on the table, though. I remember there was a volunteer something CRM that she was considering as well. I was just proposing Salesforce because I felt it was a better choice for them. And I mean, it's been, like you said, more than 10 years. They've been using it quite successfully. I know that now they're in the process of migrating to a more recent version. I'm not sure where they're going with it next, because my brother has taken over the reins in terms of their CRM for that particular nonprofit. But the idea is, we as a family have been helping and promoting this organization for quite a while. But Dad, I was wondering if you could just tell people, because I don't think we've talked about it just yet, is what do the Volunteer West Island organization, what does it do?
They recruit volunteers for programs and activities for local organizations and for local needs. They recruit from schools, high schools, TJEPs, from companies, and from retired people like myself to help with these social needs in the community. And some of the needs are the main one that they have is Meals on Wheels, where you need cooks to prepare the meals, and there are several kitchens on the West Island, maybe 10 kitchens or so, and then you need volunteers to drive them to bring the meals to the people who are shut in. So this is one of the major activities: is Meals on Wheels. They also offer frozen meals, so the people have to call them the office and say, I want some these kinds of meals. They select the meals. There's also calling of shut-ins seniors. They periodically call seniors to see how they are, how's things, if they have any problems. They prepare social events such as, physical activities such as Zumba and Tai Chi for seniors. They also have get-togethers, coffee and bingo events. They also do income tax preparations. So they do a lot of activities to help the community and to help the seniors. So this is the main field.
And how does it feel for you to be offering your services, to be, maybe overqualified, you mentioned earlier, for the position, and helping them? Like, what rewards, what self rewards do you get from doing this? Or what is the reason basically that you not decided, but kept on volunteering? Because you're still volunteering there even after all these years. So why do you do it?
Yeah, I've been there for something like 20 years, I think. I like computers, basically. I love to work. I love the challenge of fixing computers and of helping them. But it's also, like Linda says, it's my second home by this time. So I feel very welcome to be there. The people are very friendly, very greeting, and they love to see me and to know that we can help them. So it makes me feel wanted, and this is very important. Also, it keeps me busy in terms. Now, before that, sorry, I want to mention that before that, before the COVID, which started about in 2020 or so, 2021, we used to go there every week, basically on Fridays, drive to there, do whatever they needed fixing, and then come home. But now, with the COVID, people wanted to work from home, the staff. There's about 5, 6 people in the staff. They wanted to work from home and connect to their computers in the office. And we were very fortunate to find someone else by the name of Phil. Phil was extremely, also retired, but extremely knowledgeable in computers. And he set up something called Log Me In. It allows us now to work from home, to connect to all the computers in the office, to connect to all the laptops at the volunteers' homes. The volunteers using the computers at home to connect to the office. So all this networking is possible. Yeah, I'm very happy. I was alone, but now I have the support of Phil. I have the support of your brother, Michael. And I feel it's a great, it keeps me busy, but it's something I love to do.
Just also, I touch on that computer element. My dad was luckily so interested in computers from such a young age in his life that one of the very first personal computers that you could buy and bring home was the Timex Sinclair. This is like a old school computer. We have a cassette tape, which is your type of hard drive, and it was because of that and just his enthusiasm toward computers that kind of pushed me along the path to follow my degree as well in computer engineering and just to have a career in computers. So, your passion was so invigorating and so radiating, Dad, that you definitely had an influence in both not just my life but in Mike's life in helping us choose a path that has allowed us to have an amazing lifestyle today. So I want to thank you for that.
Yes, I'm very. That was a good thing. And Mom always remembered how Michael was able to do when he was in grade school, using this software to do some very, very small program with a dog coming out of his house, wagging his tails and then wagging his tail and then going back to the into his little cabin. This was very, very interesting. And it kept me going because we exchanged each other. We were motivating from each other. Michael was active, you were active, and we interacted that way. So that was how it continued.
Yeah, my mom had a lot of patience with us around the kitchen table, especially around dinner time, because the three of us would just talk shop about all the latest computers, all the latest technology, all the latest stuff. And she was luckily enough that patient and appreciated the moment for what it was, because obviously she couldn't follow the conversation. This was not her interest area of interest. She is more and has been always more on the art side. But yeah, it was that passion that started with you, Dad, that allowed us to be where we are. So
I,
thanks
I,
again.
I want to say something else that mom did. Your
Sure.
mom did is that because of your conflict, you all wanted to go at the same time. We had only one
Mm.
computer, so you all wanted to go on it. She set up a whole schedule on a bulletin board, saying, "This is Michael. This is you. This is me." So this was a thing that she's very well managing the household in that way by giving you a contract saying this is what you're going to do. This is your time allowance on the computer.
Yeah, I remember, Mondays from 6 to 7 was my time, 7 to 8 was my brother. Tuesdays it was the opposite. So she definitely kept us in line that way and provided a lot of feedback and support through just her organization of how we spend our time on the computer. So, in addition to the Volunteer West Island, you also, during your retirement, have been keeping yourself busy by doing research on particular topics and then presenting them to the McGill Association. Could you explain to our listeners a bit about how that works?
Yes. When I retired in the early 2000 or so, I decided to go to McGill to take evening classes in the language, in Russian language, Russian, which is basically my mother tongue. So I could not read and write in Russian. So I went to McGill. They were on the third floor of McGill. This was in the evening after work. But on the second floor, I saw something that sort of took my attention. It was called McGill Community for Lifelong Learning, MCLL. Uh, and I said, "What is this?" I walked in and I got some pamphlets. And apparently, this is an organization, part of McGill, who promote learning to senior people in retirement. And they have classes from Monday to Thursday. And then they have lectures given by different speakers on Fridays. So I said, okay. And I decided to join. And I've been joining now for about, I don't know, 15, maybe 20, something in between 15 to 20 years. And I think my main interest is history, ancient history. And we have classes by now. I used to go downtown before the COVID virus came in, but now we are more isolated on the West Island. We don't go downtown so much, so we do it by Zoom. So there's classes at McGill, physical classes called hybrid, where people are present in the class, maybe 10 people, and there's about 10 people on Zoom. And each one of us is asked, if possible, not forced, but asked kindly to make a presentation. And I like to make presentations using PowerPoint, again, using computers. And it's always a challenge to find the right thing. How you do this, how you do that. And anyway, I managed to do it. And I find that people enjoy my presentations. Some of it are quite rated as good, excellent. And I've still been doing this continuously. It's a sessions of 10 weeks. Each session is 10 weeks of 2 hours in each session. I go Monday afternoon from 2 to 4. And then this goes on 3 times in January, in April, and in September. We have these classes. So that's what I cover many topics. I like to do a lot of topics around the Mediterranean, Egypt, the Palestine area, Greece, Rome. So I did lots of topics on these things, on the Crusades, Queen Cleopatra from Egypt, the history of writing, the Persian Empire, the black pharaohs of Egypt, and so on and so forth. Okay.
Yeah, it's hard for me now to come over to you guys' place and not hear some story about the topic you're researching about, like the Eiffel Tower. I think for like
Yes.
months, every time I came over, I would get a little clip of a small segment of history about the Eiffel Tower or Cleopatra or any of one of those topics you mentioned, which is quite fun to listen to.
It's strange that you mentioned the Eiffel Tower. It's a very current topic. I've done so far this current year, 2023. I did it 4 times to different people. I did it in Montreal, I did it to Toronto, and I did it to British Columbia, way out west in British Columbia. And now the fellow who's organizing it wants me to do it to Cambridge, England, to retired folks
Wow,
in Cambridge. So in February or March of the 2024, yeah, he wants me to do a 5th presentation on Eiffel Tower.
that's awesome.
That's, it's amazing. By the way, he died 100 years ago in December 27th, Gustav Eiffel.
Hmm,
So they're celebrating his 100th anniversary. Well, I have. The other one I
sure.
enjoyed very much is doing Napoleon Bonaparte.
Hmm.
That was very current because they made a movie with Napoleon, a British movie, which I'm not sure about its success. But I made a presentation on this. This was a presentation on Friday, a lecture on Friday, which is what the McGill does, and that was came out very successful. And again, I had to do it a couple of times because they enjoyed it so much.
Oh, I have so that I have actually a really cool question for you. From your perspective, what is your perception and what do you think where things are going with AI?
I I don't have much information on it. I use Chat GPT just once in a while just to see what for fun what it looks like, what it can do. AI, I don't have any much information on it, but it, people tend to be scared of it because it's got so powerful tool. But that's all. I scared that it might take over the world. Even who knows? There's been movies like that with robots that take over.
But you use ChatGPT. How do you use it?
Or I just use it on my phone and I type a few things. Oh, when was Napoleon born? When was who's Eiffel? Gustav Eiffel, and it gives me some answers. It also says prepare a birthday card for someone, a good friend of mine. So it gives me a whole bunch of text, which is very nice. But I don't use it really. But beyond that, just for fun.
Sure. I was just curious. So I mean, obviously, going looking forward, your plan is to do more presentations with the Volunteer West Island. I know Phil is not Phil, but what's the new guy's name?
Phil, we were
It
very
is Phil. Okay, I
fortunate
was right.
to
Yeah.
Phil.
So I imagine with Phil, you're gonna you kind of pass the reins off a little bit and take your foot off the gas as time goes on. But is there anything else you'd like to do, at least in the nonprofit world, in this space, in the next couple of years?
I want to continue with McGill for the next couple of years, of course, or more if I can. I want to continue with the volunteer West Island office with the help of Phil. Yes, he's taking more and more activities, more tasks from my hands. Although I just there's. Oh, by the way, since since this COVID started, since the people are working from home,
Hmm.
Linda was kind enough decided to buy just about everybody new desktop computers. They're small computers, the size of a book, but they're so powerful, and they're Windows 11 now. So now that they have new computers, we don't have to do any physical work on them except to install the software, which we can do by remote using LogMe. And so I have less responsibilities with the volunteer at West Island. But I love to go there. Like they said it's my second home. I also do a little bit of volunteering there was a lady who I used to drive her for, she could not have, she couldn't drive. So I used to take her to the pharmacy, to take her to a food store, to take her to the bank. But she died 3 years ago. So her husband was left alone. Her husband is now 100 years old. Imagine that. And he's still using computers to do Skype and to do emails. Uh, so he calls me from time to time to help, and I go and visit him. And we still work. He still work with computers, and he's so happy. He got a laptop from the West Island, which for free, and I installed it at his senior residence. And he's I think, the only guy in the whole organization using computers in that senior home. That's also kind of fun. And I'm really happy to help him because he's a very kind gentleman. He's got all his faculties except his legs. He's in a wheelchair. So, but he has no glasses. He has no hearing aids. His fingers are good. He's got no medical problems except perhaps for falling down from time to time. But otherwise, he's in really good health. And I enjoy visiting him from time to time. So that's another activity I do on the side.
Your passion for computers is evident just in hearing and listening to you talk. Dad, listen, you've been an amazing guest. Thank you so much for joining me today. Thank you for everything.
Well, thank you, Alex. Thank you for allowing me to share this experience with you. And I wish you the best for the coming year and in your new career with Salesforce.
Well, it's not so new anymore. Like you
I
said,
mean,
it's
that's
been
new,
10
but yeah, okay. Your continued career in Salesforce. Sorry about that.
Awesome. All right, that's it for today. I am Alexander Lapa, and I hope you join me again in the next Agents of Nonprofit.